Box cameras. Box cameras were the first cameras normal people could actually buy in the early 1900s. They were literally a wooden or metal box with a single lens on the front and film inside. There were no settings, no dials, no focusing. You just pointed the box at something, pressed the shutter, and hoped the photo came out. These cameras were used by families who wanted simple snapshots, travelers who wanted to document their trips, and everyday people who had never touched a camera before. They were extremely popular because they were cheap and easy to use. You didn't need any photography knowledge. People weren't expecting perfect detail. They just wanted memories. They worked in the simplest way possible. Light entered through the lens, hit the film, and created an image. That's it. Folding cameras. Folding cameras came next and were a big upgrade. They had a bellows, that accordion-looking part, which allowed the lens to move forward and backward. These cameras were used by early photographers, journalists, explorers, and anyone who needed better clarity than a box camera could offer. They were portable because you could fold them flat and carry them easily, which made them perfect for travel photography in the early 1900s. Clarity was noticeably sharper because the lens could focus at different distances. Photos had more detail, better contrast, and less blur. For the time, folding cameras were considered mid-range to high-end tools. They worked by adjusting the distance between the lens and the film. When the bellows extended, the lens could focus light more accurately onto the film. This simple mechanism made a huge difference in image quality. Large format. Large format cameras used giant sheets of film, sometimes the size of your hand. These cameras were big, slow, and required a tripod, but the clarity they produced was unmatched. They were used for landscapes, architecture, fine art photography, and studio portraits. Photographers loved them because the huge film size captured insane detail, far more than any small camera could. They worked by using a ground glass screen for focusing. You looked at the image upside down on the glass, adjusted the lens, and then inserted the film sheet. It was slow but precise. Large format cameras were the premium professional cameras of the early 1900s and are still used today by some artists. Twin lens reflex. TLR had two lenses stacked vertically. The top lens was for viewing, and the bottom lens was for taking the photo. You looked down into the camera and saw a bright, clear image reflected by a mirror. These cameras were used in portrait studios, fashion photography, and professional work. They produced iconic square photos that became a signature look of 1970s photography. Clarity was extremely sharp because the lenses were high quality and the film was large. They worked by separating seeing and capturing. The viewing lens showed you the scene, while the taking lens exposed the film. Rangefinders. Rangefinders were small, quiet cameras used by street photographers and journalists. They had a unique focusing system. When you looked through the viewfinder, you saw two overlapping images. You turned the focus ring until the two images lined up perfectly. That meant the subject was in focus. These cameras were used for travel, documentary work, journalism, and everyday shooting. They were loved because they were compact, fast, and silent. You could take photos without drawing attention. Rangefinders were the street photography kings for decades. Film SLR. Film SLR became the standard for over 50 years. They used a mirror system that let you look directly through the lens. What you saw in the viewfinder was exactly what the camera captured. These cameras were used for weddings, sports, portraits, journalism, wildlife, and studio work. They were the go-to choice for professionals and serious hobbyists. Clarity depended on the lens and film. They worked by flipping the mirror up when you pressed the shutter, allowing light to hit the film. Film SLR dominated photography until digital cameras arrived. Point-and-shoot film. Point-and-shoot film cameras were the everyday cameras of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. They were small, simple, and designed for people who didn't want to think about photography at all. You just aimed the camera, pressed the shutter, and the camera handled everything automatically. These cameras were used by families, travelers, students, and anyone who wanted quick snapshots. They were extremely popular because they were cheap, lightweight, and easy to carry. You could take them to holidays, parties, school trips, anywhere. Clarity was decent, but not professional. The lenses were small, and the film was usually consumer grade, so the photos had a soft, casual look. The camera decided how much light to let in, and you didn't have to adjust anything. Point-and-shoot film cameras were basically the casual camera before digital cameras and smartphones took over. Super 8. Super 8 cameras were small film video cameras from the 1960s to the 1980s. They used Super 8 film cartridges, which made shooting video incredibly easy for the time. You just loaded the cartridge, pressed record, and the camera captured moving images on film. These cameras were used for home movies, school projects, early filmmaking, and even some indie films. Families used them to record birthdays, holidays, and everyday life. Even today, filmmakers sometimes use Super 8 to get that retro aesthetic. They worked by exposing film frame by frame as the cartridge moved through the camera. Camcorders. Camcorders arrived in the 1980s and completely changed video recording. Instead of film, they used magnetic tape or digital storage. They had built-in zoom lenses, flip-out screens, and long battery life. They worked by converting light into electronic signals and storing them on tape or memory cards. Camcorders made video accessible to everyone and dominated the 90s and early 2000s. Digital compact. Digital compact cameras were the next evolution. They were small, pocket-friendly cameras that used digital sensors instead of film. You could take hundreds of photos, delete the bad ones, and see your shots instantly. These cameras were used by families, tourists, students, and casual photographers. They were extremely popular in the 2000s because they were cheap, easy to use, and produced better clarity than early phone cameras. Clarity was good in daylight, but weaker in low light because the sensors were small. They worked by capturing light on a small sensor and processing the image instantly. Digital compact cameras ruled the world until smartphones became powerful enough to replace them. DSLR. DSLRs are the digital version of film SLRs. They use a mirror system and a digital sensor, giving you the same look-through-the-lens experience, but with instant digital results. These cameras were used for weddings, sports, wildlife, portraits, journalism, and professional photography. They became the standard for serious photographers in the 2000s and early 2010s. Clarity is excellent because the sensors are large and the lenses are high quality. DSLRs can handle low light, fast movement, and detailed shots extremely well. They worked by flipping the mirror up when you press the shutter, allowing light to hit the sensor. DSLRs dominated digital photography until mirrorless cameras arrived. Mirrorless. Mirrorless cameras remove the mirror completely. They're smaller, lighter, and faster because the sensor handles everything, focusing, previewing, and capturing. These cameras are used by YouTubers, filmmakers, photographers, vloggers, and content creators. They're basically the modern standard for both photo and video. Clarity is extremely high, sometimes better than DSLRs, and video quality is strong enough for professional work. They work by sending a live preview from the sensor to the screen or electronic viewfinder. Medium format. Medium format cameras use huge sensors or huge film. They're bigger than DSLRs and mirrorless cameras, and they capture far more detail. These cameras are used for fashion, commercial photography, magazine covers, billboards, and high-end studio work. Prices range from £3,000 to £10,000 plus. Action cameras. Action cameras are tiny, tough cameras built for movement. They're waterproof, shockproof, and designed to survive extreme conditions. These cameras are used for sports, travel, biking, skiing, surfing, and vlogging. Clarity is good in daylight but weaker in low light because the sensor is small. Prices range from £200 to £500. Cinema. Cinema cameras are the highest-end cameras used for movies, commercials, and professional video. They have massive sensors, huge dynamic range, and extremely sharp detail. These cameras are used by filmmakers, studios, cinematographers, and high-end creators. Clarity is on another level, deep colors, clean shadows, and huge amounts of data. Prices start around $3,800 and can go up to $50,000 plus. If you like this video, you might want to check our other videos.